A Second Chance at Love. Previous episodes are available in playlist, a link is given in the video description. Episode 88. Not interested in talking. We've captured Christina Patel, Lucian announced casually. Roxanne was fully engrossed in her conversation with Peregrine, discussing the particulars of replicating the vaccine, when suddenly she stopped mid-sentence, realizing that she hadn't heard what Lucian had said clearly. Madeline had heard his words, so she repeated, "Mr. Farwell said he has captured the culprit of this crisis, Christina Patel. Old Mr. Lomax, if the problem is solved, please continue with the next step as soon as possible. We're racing against time here." More than 30 people had been infected by this bacterium in the hospital. After hanging up, Roxanne finally had time to digest Lucian's words. "Darling, did you anticipate Christina's actions with your impressive display of foresight and crafted an intricately detailed plan to capture her?" Her awe of her husband was evidenced by the overly complimentary language she used in her expression of admiration. Lucian's face was tight with tension at first, but he felt a wave of embarrassment wash through him when he heard Roxanne's compliments. "Where is she? I'd like to give her a few slaps." Madeline felt her right arm trembling in anger. "She'll be here soon. I've told my bodyguards to bring her here," Lucian replied. He glanced at Roxanne, afraid that she would get emotional. To his surprise, Roxanne seemed to have breathed a sigh of relief and had calmed down. "She has framed me countless times, and I'm finally getting to see her today," she said calmly. Madeline exclaimed furiously, "Roxanne, you must take action and ensure that this woman is punished for her immoral behavior. She should be sent to prison for the hurtful and malicious things she has done. It's appalling that such a cruel person even exists in this world." Right then, the leader knocked on the door. "Mr. Farwell, we're here. Come on in," Lucian ordered. The door was pushed open to reveal an unconscious Christina. At first glance, one would know she had undergone plastic surgery. It was apparent that there were not many options for plastic surgeries in Hawaiian, as all patients appeared to look the same after undergoing plastic surgery. However, Roxanne immediately recognized that this was Aubrey due to her figure. After the bodyguards threw Christina unceremoniously to the ground, they straightened their backs, waiting for Lucian's order. "You may leave now." Lucian waved his hands, and the bodyguards filed out swiftly. Madeline raked her gaze over Christina and muttered angrily, "Why is she unconscious? Is she putting up an act? Let me get some water to splash on her." Without hesitation, she hurried out of her office to get some water. Roxanne felt a swell of conflicting emotions as she looked at Christina. "Lucian, she has come into contact with us in this office. Thus, I believe she'll get infected with the pathogenic bacteria soon," she suddenly declared. Lucian gave a curt nod. "That was what I had in mind. Besides, she won't be receiving any treatment unless Mr. Goldstein has the vaccine with him at all times." His voice was calm, devoid of any emotion. Christina had devised multiple devious plots against Roxanne in an attempt to end her life, which made him unwilling to see her as Aubrey anymore. Even if Lucian had not taken any steps to intervene, Christina would still be spending the remainder of her life behind bars. "To be honest, I don't think there's a need to talk with her anymore. It's pointless," Roxanne said truthfully, as she was no longer interested in talking to Christina anymore. "If you apologize to me sincerely." Madeline soon returned to her office with a pail full of water. Without hesitation, she poured the contents of the pail onto Christina's body, making sure to drench the latter completely. "If killing isn't against the law, I would have poured a bucket of boiling molten iron on her," Madeline added. She glared at Christina viciously, waiting for the latter to regain consciousness. Lucian and Roxanne waited with anticipation for her to stir, curious to find out how she would react to the situation. A few seconds later, Christina's eyes fluttered open. Confusion rippled across her expression and she spun around, her eyes widening when she noticed Lucian and Roxanne standing there. For a moment, her breath hitched in her throat. A look of sheer panic crossed her face as she realized she was completely drenched. At once, she curled into a ball and retreated hastily. Conflicting emotions filled her gaze. "It appears that you have outsmarted me, Mr. Farwell." "Well, it's not surprising considering your intelligence was the trait that initially drew me to you." Christina's gaze was filled with intense loathing as she watched Roxanne holding tightly onto Lucian. Nevertheless, Roxanne wasn't afraid of her gaze at all. She discovered that Christina dared not meet Lucian's gaze. It was obvious Christina was trying to provoke them, but Roxanne wasn't in the mood to talk to her. It was simply not worth the time or energy to talk to someone like her. Lucian ignored her and reached out to take Roxanne's hand affectionately. Christina's pretentiousness crumbled upon that sight. She initially planned to act as though she couldn't care less, but deep down she was still unable to truly come to terms with Lucian and Roxanne being in love with each other. Madeline demanded, "Christina, you were the one responsible for all of the chaos that occurred at the hospital, weren't you?" He was appalled that Christina had the nerve to act very enthusiastic and self-confident. Anger surged through her veins as she stormed up to Christina and delivered a hard slap to her face. The loud, sharp sound of a slap reverberated through the air, completely taking Christina by surprise. She turned to face Madeline. A red mark was visible on her cheek, yet her eyes still sparkled with anger and defiance. She gave Madeline an insolent smirk and stated in a challenging tone, "Yes, it was me." "So? Are you surprised?" "Surprise? Do you really think that taking the lives of more than a dozen individuals is nothing more than a surprise? Well, if that is the case, then I will give you a taste of your own medicine and show you what a real surprise feels like." Annoyed, Madeline grabbed Christina's hair and slapped both her cheeks. Christina didn't show any signs of struggling. Blood trickled down the corner of her lips, but she laughed out loud. "Roxanne, Madeline, you both must have been infected, right? It's fine. Even if you end my life right now, I will go with a smile on my face, knowing that the bacteria will soon take over your bodies and put an end to your lives." Seeing how smug Christina looked, Roxanne gazed at her calmly as though she had gone crazy. She started coughing as her throat felt itchy. Lucian couldn't be bothered to look at Christina. He asked in a concerned tone, "Do you feel unwell?" He grabbed Roxanne's cup and handed it to her. "I knew you've been infected. That means you've also been infected, Madeline. As you both were in a confined space, there was no way for you to avoid it." Christina grew elated. She finally summoned the courage to finally look at Lucian. As she met his gaze, Her expression grew placid and she uttered, "It's true that you are a proficient individual, Lucian, however, this particular situation is far from easy. I'm assuming you've been infected as well, so if you would be willing to apologize for your past transgressions, I might be able to assist you in obtaining the vaccine." "Do you still not believe it, Christina? Drop the act. I'm going to take care of my husband's infection. You've already been infected, and you're on your own now." At first, Roxanne was reluctant to speak out, but then she came to the realization that Christina was still intent on threatening Lucian even though she would be meeting her doom soon. Her eyes conveyed a look of compassion as she reminded Christina of the situation. What a foolish woman! In spite of the dire circumstances, Christina still managed to show a coy, contemptuous grin and firmly shook her head. "No way! You may be skilled, but you can't expect to develop a vaccine in such a short amount of time. If you want to make it out of this alive, you'll have to use me as a bargaining chip to get the vaccine from Mr. Goldstein." Madeline couldn't hold it in any longer. She snorted icily and declared, "Ha! I knew you wouldn't believe it. I mean, look at us. We're both perfectly calm, aren't we? You should really think carefully before jumping to any conclusions." Christina was taken aback to hear that. She quickly raked her gaze over the three of them. Shaking her head profusely, she insisted, "No, that's impossible. There's no way you could have done that. Even if the vaccine is flown in from Maranta, it won't arrive in 3 hours. You're just trying to delay time." "Delay? Do you honestly believe that I would permit someone else to dictate terms to me and direct the course of my life?" Lucian's voice was laced with icy contempt. Christina refused to believe either Roxanne or Madeline, but Lucian's words made her break down instantly. Lucian exuded confidence, and he made sure that anything he said was achievable. Roxanne is capable of creating a vaccine. Astonishment struck her, and her heart was torn between a feeling of intense anger and an unwillingness to accept the situation. "It is clear that you are of no value to us," Lucian said in a level-headed manner, "and I am not going to let you go this time." "No. How did you do that, Roxanne? How could you possibly achieve that?" Lucian's words had sealed Christina's destiny. However, she still refused to give up and fixed her gaze on Roxanne stubbornly. Madeline shook her head and revealed, "Oh, I feel so sorry for you. We don't need to get the vaccine delivered from Maranta. As long as we know the production method, Roxanne's research institute has all the resources and capability to produce it. That will take less than 3 hours. It's time for you to give up now." At the same time, Roxanne's phone rang. It was a call from Peregrine, so she answered it instantly. "Roxanne, the vaccine is ready. It will be delivered to the hospital soon. How are you doing? Your condition didn't worsen, did it?" Peregrine sounded concerned. "We're fine. You may deliver the vaccine here, but there's no rush. Safety comes first," Roxanne instructed briefly before cutting the line. She then gave Lucian and Madeline a firm nod. "That's quick. It has only been over an hour." Madeline relaxed as she gave Christina an amused look. "Hear that, Christina? The vaccine is ready. Do you still not trust us?" Christina was shocked by the news that she froze. It was as if she had just been struck by lightning. She didn't know how to react to that piece of information. After what felt like an eternity, but only 30 seconds later, she slowly came to her senses and started to tremble uncontrollably. Her body felt so weak she could not even stand up and instead slumped against the wall, crouching down in the fatal position. In a daze, she started muttering to herself. I admit defeat. I've lost. In the end, I failed to avenge myself. Roxanne, I despise you. I curse you every day, but why are you so lucky? Roxanne, you should rot in hell. A few seconds later, she found herself overwhelmed by an intense, sudden surge of emotion and jumped up to lunge at Roxanne. She will never forgive her. Thanks to his quick reflexes, Lucian was able to shield Roxanne behind him and grab Christina by the throat at the same time. His long arms stopped Christina from getting any closer, so she could only claw helplessly at the air, flailing her limbs while cursing under her breath. With a gentle shove, Lucian sent her tumbling backward and falling to the floor. I hate you, Lucian. I hate you so much. How could you treat me like this, Lucian? Have you no heart? Have you no conscience? She shrieked at the top of her voice. Even Madeline was a little shocked by Christina's sudden hysterical outburst. She was not expecting her to lash out like that. Have you lost your mind, Christina? She shouted angrily. Ha ha ha. Yes, I have. I'm madly in love with you, Lucian. I love you so much that I would cut my heart out for you, but I'm filthy now. Why would you be so cruel to me, Lucian? My family is ruined. You're just his ex-wife, Roxanne. I'm his fiancée. How dare you steal him from me? I will never forgive you, not even in death. As Christina shrieked, her expression alternated between sadness, excitement, and anger, which showed just how unstable her mental state was. She wasn't even looking at Lucian and Roxanne. Instead, her eyes were actually fixated on the walls and ceiling around her as she writhed about in agony. She then started pulling at her hair and cupped her hands over her cheeks as she thrashed about violently, only to hit her head on the concrete wall next to her a few seconds later. The loud noise sent shivers down Madeline's spine. What has gotten into her? Has she gone crazy? Madeline was clearly frightened by Christina's actions. The look in Roxanne's eyes turned gloomy as she said, she's unable to cope with the overwhelming shock, so her subconscious is creating illusions to help her escape from the pain. This may be a sign of hysteria. Christina continued slamming her head against the wall with an increasing amount of force until blood came spurting out of her head. Madeline was so taken aback by the gruesome sight before her that she didn't know what to do. Roxanne did not expect things to take such a dramatic turn. Madeline, sedate her before she attempts anything crazier. What happens to Christina is none of my concern, so I really don't feel like helping her. However, this is my hospital, so I can't just sit by and do nothing. If something bad happens, the whole hospital might get in trouble. Lucian could seemingly read Roxanne's mind, for he walked up to the window and closed it. After all, it would be bad for the hospital's reputation if Christina jumped out the window as a result of her hysteria. Madeline ran out of the office and returned shortly after with a syringe in hand. She then grabbed Christina's arm and injected the deranged woman with sedatives. About 30 seconds later, Christina's eyes rolled back as she collapsed to the floor. "Call the police, Lucian. We'll let them handle everything. She's involved with Electra's case, so she's not getting away this time," Roxanne said calmly. Lucian nodded and called the police on his phone. 10 minutes later, the police arrived and took Christina, who was still unconscious, to a specialized hospital for suspects. Peregrine came over later with some medicine. "I'll give this a try and see how it goes. If nothing goes wrong after half an hour, we can distribute this to all the doctors and nurses," Roxanne said. It was not the first time she had used herself as a test subject for her medication. Lucian frowned when he saw what she was about to do. He snatched the pills out of her hand and popped them into his mouth. "I should be the one to test it. You're pregnant, remember?" he reminded her while caressing her tummy. Peregrine froze in shock for a few seconds before congratulating Lucian. "Congratulations, Mr. Farwell. I have a feeling you'll be giving birth to twins this time. A boy and a girl. Stop going down this path." The result of Lucian's drug testing came out half an hour later. Fortunately for him, the drug worked really well and cured him of his cough completely. However, it left him feeling incredibly thirsty and caused him to sweat profusely. "Here, drink some water. The drug will stimulate your body's immune system to work together and eliminate the virus," Roxanne explained while handing him a bottle of water. "Will it affect pregnant women?" Lucian asked, still worried about Roxanne. "No, it won't. This drug will be absorbed into the intestinal walls and will be excreted within 8 hours. It'll be fine." Roxanne reassured him as she took the pills herself. Madeline followed suit before excitedly distributing the rest of the pills among the doctors and nurses. Just like that, the sudden crisis outbreak that started in the morning was finally averted at 1 in the afternoon. Jonathan approached the personnel from the Centers for Disease Control at the hospital entrance and updated them on the situation, prompting them to lift the restrictions on the hospital. Still worried about a certain individual, he then rushed back to the director's office, only to see Lucian and Roxanne having a sweet moment together. "Lucian, Roxanne, are you two okay? Where's Madeline?" he asked. Lucian and Roxanne smiled when they saw how anxious he looked. "Why do you ask? Are you worried about her?" Roxanne teased him. Jonathan let out an awkward chuckle. "I'm guessing she's all right, then. That's good to know. What are you doing standing around here? Go help her out in the emergency ward." Lucian urged him impatiently. Jonathan nodded and ran out of the director's office as quickly as his legs could carry. Meanwhile, Coralie was staring wide-eyed at everything that was going on inside the hospital from the building across from it. Roxanne was able to produce the medicine so quickly, and Madeline is all right as well. Not only did they manage to avert the crisis at the hospital, but they also got the police to come arrest Christina. "Thank goodness I didn't leave immediately, or I would have been caught by Lucian." Sean had a conflicted look in his eyes as he stood behind her. Coralie turned around to face her brother. Wearing a complex expression, she said sheepishly, "Thanks for rushing over and informing me in time, Sean. Had you arrived half an hour late, I would have gone downstairs and got caught red-handed by Lucian." "Give it up, Coralie. Jonathan doesn't have feelings for you. If you continue down this path, you'll end up just like Christina," Sean said softly. Coralie fell silent when she heard that. There was a hint of reluctance in her eyes, but she knew that Sean was right. "But I really like Jonathan," Coralie protested. "No, Coralie. This is not the same. Remember how you always wanted my toys when we were little? Well, this is no different. What you want is to prove your excellence and charm, but Jonathan is not a prize. Stop going down this path before it's too late," Sean retorted coldly. Coralie fell silent and went into deep thought after hearing that. Later that evening, the police called Lucian and gave him a detailed explanation of Christina's situation. Apparently, the psychiatrists at the hospital examined her after she woke up and confirmed that she was suffering from severe mental illness and required long-term treatment. Slow down, the sky was drizzling outside the prison early in the morning. Roxanne and Lucian waited quietly in their Rolls-Royce until the large iron gate slowly opened. Colby, still wearing his prison uniform, listened to the middle-aged prison warden's advice. "Be a good person after you leave this place, and don't make any more mistakes." He nodded, curling the corner of his lips into a relieved smile. "I will, Mr. Zagami. When I find a new job and earn money, I will definitely come back to visit you. Thank you for always helping me." "You're most welcome. You don't need to come back here anymore. It's bad luck. Just get on with your life." "Oh, on," said the middle-aged prison warden with a faint smile. Colby assumed no one would be there to pick him up, so he didn't pay any attention to the Rolls-Royce parked outside either. As for her criminal activities, the police would continue to collect evidence and prosecute her accordingly. However, she would not be given a sentence until she recovered from her mental illness. The police even thanked Roxanne for warning them that Christina could be infected with the new bacteria. Otherwise, many more could end up being infected because of her. "Mr. Farwell, she has started to develop symptoms of the new bacterial infection. I heard that Ms. Jarvis has already produced a drug that could cure those who are infected. Can Christina be given treatment as well?" the police officer asked politely. Lucian shifted his gaze toward Roxanne as he explained the situation to her. "Give it to her. It wouldn't be punishment enough if she were to die just like this," Roxanne replied coldly. An astonished expression spread across his face when he noticed Lucian showing up while holding Roxanne's hand to help her get out of the vehicle. "Colby, you're finally out." Lucian grinned slightly. Initially, they thought they would have to wait a few more months before Colby was released. Unexpectedly, the latter's sentence was reduced because of his good behavior in jail. The expression in Roxanne's eyes was calm and gentle. Having already forgotten past grievances, she nodded at Colby. "Hello, Mr. Galloway. Welcome back." Colby was utterly astounded, for he had never expected the couple to pick him up, let alone that Roxanne would give him a chance to return to the research institute. On the way, emotions churned within Colby as he watched the rapidly passing scenery outside the window. Lucian had originally planned a lavish lunch to celebrate Colby's liberation. However, Colby politely declined. "I've been eating plain and bland meals in prison, so it's not suitable for me to suddenly consume a sumptuous meal after coming out. That can easily cause indigestion and pancreatitis, which can be life-threatening." Roxanne nodded in agreement, while Lucian smiled and did not insist. "Thank you for picking me up. I'll report to the Research Institute tomorrow. Please send me to this address as I need to deliver a message for someone in the prison," Colby piped up. Lucian and Roxanne agreed. They also reminded him to change into a different outfit as soon as possible. After all, walking around the streets dressed in prison uniform would attract too much attention. After sending Colby off, the couple returned to their car. "He really missed out, but since I've already booked the restaurant, let's have our meal there ourselves." Lucian's suggestion immediately received Roxanne's affirmation and support. Lucian and Roxanne finally decided to pick up the three kids at the entrance of the art academy after strolling around for an entire afternoon. Amidst the bustling crowd after school, Archie and Benny held Estella's hands on either side, ensuring their sister's safety as they exited the school. The three children were thrilled because their parents would pick them up from school that day. Upon spotting their parents from a distance away, they immediately quickened their pace. "Slow down. Don't run," Roxanne hurriedly reminded them, as there were too many people around them. Lucian, on the other hand, moved swiftly and ran toward the children's location. Just as he was about to reach them, several children suddenly emerged from beside Archie and Benny. The kids had a clear target. As they approached, they reached out to push Archie and Benny, causing them to lose their balance and fall heavily to the ground. Before falling, Archie and Benny let go of their sister's hand at the same time to prevent her from toppling over as well. The boys grimaced in pain after hitting the ground. Their knees scraped against the cement floor, and blood came oozing out from the grazed wound. "Archie! Benny!" Estella cried out in fear. Instantaneously, Lucian's pupils constricted, and his eyes gleamed with malicious coldness. He quickened his pace and strode over to his son's side. Subsequently, he trained his eyes on the few children who were trying to escape at once. Colors drained from Roxanne's face as she was frightened by the scene unfolding before her. She hastily jogged toward her children as well. "My children Archie, Benny, are you okay? Does it hurt?" Lucian helped the two kids up, his eyes filled with concern as he looked at the blood trickling down their knees. He was enveloped in an intense malevolent aura. Estella also rushed over to check on her two brothers. When she noticed they were both injured and bleeding, her eyes immediately reddened, and tears threatened to fall. "Lucian, don't let those kids get away." While running over, Roxanne felt rage boiling within her chest. Those children obviously harmed Archie and Benny on purpose. I clearly saw there were 4 of them. 4 against 2, not to mention launching a sneak attack. Those kids are simply evil to their cores. Lucian kept his eyes glued on those 4 kids, and he noticed they were trying to take advantage of the crowd to flee. As soon as Roxanne arrived, Lucian immediately sprang into action, quickly giving chase in the direction where the 4 children had gotten away. "Mommy, come and take a look at Archie and Benny!" Estella shouted helplessly. Roxanne's heart tightened. Upon reaching their side, she immediately crouched down to examine the boys' injuries. Fortunately, the wounds weren't severe. They merely suffered from scraped skin and minor bleeding. She quickly took out some wet wipes to clean the wounds. "Does it hurt?" Roxanne carefully checked for any dust or small stones in the abrasions. "Mommy, don't worry. It doesn't hurt that much, said Archie, hastily trying to comfort his mother. Benny also comforted Estella. Essie, we're fine. We aren't afraid of shedding a bit of blood because we're tough guys. Roxanne led the children to the car. Then, she took out the medical kit from the vehicle and carefully disinfected the wounds, stopped the bleeding, and sprinkled some medicinal powder on the injuries. That medicine could promote the rapid formation of scabs, specially prepared by her for the children's emergency use in case of bumps and cuts. It was very effective and wouldn't leave scars. Before long, Lucian returned with the 4 kids while wearing a dark expression. There was no way he was letting any of them go. Archie, Benny. Take a look at them. Do you recognize these children? Roxanne glared at the 4 kids. We do. Archie and Benny nodded. Then, they told their parents the 4 kids were in the same class as them. Although students in the art academy could choose their courses freely, they still belonged to a specific class. The 4 kids, like Archie and Benny, were all in the 6th class of the 1st grade. I asked them, and it turned out these 4 children targeted Archie and Benny because the 2 of them excel in various courses while they themselves are at the bottom of the class. They were jealous of Archie and Benny and took this opportunity to get their revenge. Lucian's voice was cold. He riveted his eyes on the tallest kid, who was the ringleader of the group, named Zoran Rinder. Following the incident, the parents of the 4 children quickly arrived. They appeared quite familiar with each other, even laughing and chatting as if they were used to their children causing trouble. Zoran must have bullied his classmate again. Because of his behavior, I have to spend a lot of money as compensation every month. Zoran's father appeared unconcerned. All the other parents echoed his sentiments. After all, Dave Rinder was a man with high status in society. The other parents' children weren't qualified to enter the art academy in the first place, but they were admitted due to Dave's connection. When the group arrived before Lucian and Roxanne, Dave was surprised to see his son acting submissively instead of carrying himself in his usual arrogant and insolent manner. Did you hit someone again? Whose child did you beat up this time? Dave glanced at Lucian and Roxanne's appearance. It was apparent that they were wealthy, but he didn't seem to care. His rhetorical question was laced with contempt. Lucian's expression turned a few shades darker. He suddenly stepped closer to the corpulent Dave, his tall, slender figure towering over the other man. Your kid harmed my children, the scions of the Farwell family. Get hurt for nothing. Dave was taken aback. The Farwell family. Since he had just been transferred here from the north, he wasn't too familiar with the hierarchy in the city. Moreover, never in his wildest dreams did he expect the famous Lucian Farwell from Farwell Group to be such a young man. To him, everyone in the business industry would have to treat him with respect. Still, the other parents recognized the 3 children. Aren't these 3 children the geniuses who immediately became famous when they first enrolled in the school? I think you're right. They're a pair of twins and their adorable little sister. It really is them. We're doomed. I heard that their parents are quite influential people. The Farwell family? The most prestigious family in Harrington, that Farwell family. Dumbstruck, the parents stared at Lucian and Roxanne with fearful expressions. One of them hurried over to tug Dave's arm, winking repeatedly, anxiously hoping that the latter would take the hint. Dave was bewildered. The most prestigious family in Horrington. Following that, he met Lucian's piercing gaze, and his heart lurched in response. Dave stuttered in disbelief. Though he held a pretty significant position that even the school authorities had to show him some respect, he was nowhere as influential as Lucian Farwell of Farwell Group. Scared senseless, Dave froze on the spot as he gulped nervously. "So, why did your son attack my two kids?" Lucian inquired through clenched teeth. His tone was frigid. "I'm sorry, Mr. Farwell. My child was out of line. It's my fault for not raising my child properly. I'll make sure to teach him a lesson." One of the parents, who already came back to his senses, immediately strode over to his own son and slapped the child. Next, the other parents snapped out of their dazed states as well and immediately apologized profusely. "Mr. Farwell, it was all my son's fault. I'll get him to apologize to your children immediately. Mr. Farwell, it's my fault for not educating my son properly and allowing him to behave so outrageously. Hey, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and apologize to the Farwells. Are you deaf?" Apart from Zoran, the other three children's parents punished their kids severely without showing any mercy, punching and slapping them to teach them a lesson. The three children began wailing in agony, not understanding why they were being treated this way. Prior to this, nothing had ever befallen them when they followed Zoran's lead and bullied the other kids. Zoran was stunned upon witnessing this scene. Puzzled, he asked his father, "Dad, all I did was push the twins. What's wrong with that? Dad, why aren't you saying anything? You." Dave finally understood the principle of the saying, if one played with fire, one would eventually get burned. Zoran's arrogance and domineering attitude finally led to his downfall. Dave strode toward his son with the intention of punishing him like how the other parents were doing to their own children. He hoped that his actions of beating up his own son would appease the Farwell family. However, he was unexpectedly stopped by Lucian. Roxanne shared her husband's sentiment. Gritting her teeth, she said coldly, "Mr. Rinder, I don't like the way you're handling this situation. Do you think we'll overlook the matter just because you've punished your children? My sons were injured for no reason." Dave was momentarily at a loss for words. Terror filled his eyes as he hurriedly concurred, "Why you rewrite? We should apologize and compensate you for what happened. Mrs. Farwell, right? I apologize for my son's mischievous behavior. There's no need to apologize or compensate us, but we will be deciding how to punish the 4 children." Lucian lifted a hand, silencing the clamoring parents immediately. "Respect their feelings." Lucian turned around and went over to his 3 children before kneeling down to examine Archie's and Benny's injuries. "Are you okay? Does it hurt? Tell me the truth." The look in Lucian's eyes turned tender as he tousled his son's hair affectionately before giving Estella a hug. Archie and Benny exchanged a glance and nodded. "Daddy, it hurts a little." "I see." Lucian smiled before asking, "Then how do you feel? Do you feel angry?" Benny quickly answered, "Yes. I'm infuriated." Archie nodded in agreement, for they were indeed furious. Pouting, Estella chimed in, "Daddy, I'm really mad too. I hate them for bullying Archie and Benny. Lucian acknowledged the children's feelings, and instead of comforting them, he asked in a solemn tone, "Then what would you like to do so you would feel better?" The three children exchanged glances, unsure how to react. Roxanne was touched upon seeing that. She understood what her husband was trying to achieve by guiding the children to express their feelings and intentions. Growing up, the three little ones lacked paternal and maternal love respectively, but they had always been well protected. Hence, it was always the adults who handled the situation for them whenever something bad befell them. They never had the chance to make their own decisions. Meanwhile, the other four children and their parents dared not make a sound. Dave, on the other hand, glared at his son furiously. He was aware that he would be the one who had the worst of today's incident. After a long while, Archie nodded while wearing a determined look. "Daddy, I think I know what I want." Following that, Benny added, "Me too. I'm really mad. What right do they have to bully us? I won't just let this slide without putting up a fight." Blinking, Estella turned to Roxanne and said, "Mommy, I hate them. I don't ever want to see them again." Upon hearing their children express their thoughts straightforwardly, Lucian and Roxanne exchanged glances before nodding. Then, Lucian directed his gaze at the parents who were cowed into silence. "We'll give as good as we get. Since your children pushed my sons will now retaliate in the same way," Lucian announced calmly. Inwardly, the children's parents sighed in relief. A punishment from kids should be harmless. Thank goodness. However, Roxanne added, "You heard what my daughter said. So, I'll do whatever it takes to ensure that these 4 kids are expelled from this school." The children's parents froze upon hearing Roxanne's words. But on second thought, our children were never qualified to enter this school in the first place. As long as our jobs and careers are not affected, we'll accept this punishment willingly. After all, we deserve this. However, Dave's expression changed drastically. "If this matter escalates, I don't think I'll be able to retain my current position." Under the watchful eyes of Lucian and Roxanne, Zoran and the other 3 children stood in a row, seemingly unfazed. They did not think Archie and Benny were strong enough to actually knock them down. However, Archie and Benny gained momentum as they charged forward and knocked 2 of the kids down on the ground, causing them to writhe and wail in pain. Zoran and the other remaining child were terrified upon witnessing the scene before their eyes. They had no idea that Archie and Benny had learned some simple combat skills from their bodyguard before this. Upon succeeding in their first attempt, the twins exchanged glances and grinned. They then took a few steps back before getting ready to launch another attack, totally forgetting about the pain in their knees. This time, Zoran was Archie's target. Sprinting forward, Archie crashed into Zoran's back like a tiny cannonball. The force he exerted was so great that even a dull thud was audible when their bodies collided. Zoran fell to the ground face first and shouted in pain. His nose was bleeding when he struggled to get up. "Please have mercy on me, ouch, it hurts." Zoran burst into tears. Dave felt sorry for his bawling son but dared not go over to help him up. Upon seeing Zoran being thrown to the ground, the other children shuddered and gazed at the twins with fear. When Archie and Benny returned to Lucian and Roxanne's side, they looked down at their own hands with uncertainty, shaking their heads as if they weren't sure if they had done the right thing. While observing the expressions on their faces, Lucian knelt down and stroked their heads with his large hand. With a calm look on his face, he said, "Archie, Benny, there are all kinds of people in this world, and you should reserve your kindness only for those who deserve it instead of using it on the wrong people. You don't have to be nice to those who act rudely or unreasonably, and don't even bother to try to reason with them." Those words struck a chord in Roxanne's heart. The two boys, who had been raised under her care, were gentle and calm in nature. However, they seemed to lack a certain sense of masculine energy. If they were to continue to develop their personalities in that manner, she believed they would have a hard time surviving in the complex society they were destined to face as adults. That was why she fully supported her husband's teaching methods. After all, he did not teach them to resort to violence but to respect their inner voices and learn to fend for themselves. He also taught them to not tolerate evildoers out of kindness and compassion. Dave and the other parents stayed away from their children, watching them shriek and cry from a distance. These children finally got a taste of their own medicine. In the end, Lucian looked at them and said icily, "You can leave now, but I don't want to see your children in this school ever again." He made it clear that the children would have no choice but to withdraw from the academy. The outcome would remain the same whether they chose to leave the school voluntarily or Lucian escalated the issue to the school's management. Those parents nodded right away. "Yes, yes. We know what to do. My son's grades are not up to par anyway. There's no point wasting money to keep him in this art academy. Thanks for being so forgiving, Mr. Farwell. My son has always had a mischievous streak, but I'll make sure to educate him to become a better person after this." "Thank you, Mr. Farwell." Another parent echoed. "Mr. Farwell, we'll be leaving with our kids now. What happened today is entirely our fault," another person added. Relieved, the parents then scampered away with their 3 children in tow. Dave knew he could not leave because Lucian still had some unfinished business with him. Lucian arched his brow, and a sarcastic smile curved his lips. He glanced at Dave and said, "Mr. Rinder, looks like you're a man with considerable power and influence. I wouldn't be surprised if some of your assets were obtained through less than legal means. Shall I bring this to the attention of the Central Discipline Inspection Committee?" Dave's face turned pale in an instant. He knew Lucian would not let him off so easily, but he did not expect the man would be so ruthless. Yet, he did not have the courage to fight back. After coming to his senses, he began to tear up and begged for Lucian's forgiveness. "Mr. Farwell, it's all my fault. I'm arrogant, and I'm not a good parent. I failed to teach my son properly, but I'll do my best to become a better person. You can punish me however you want, but please don't make me lose my job." Lucian knitted his brows and shot daggers at him. "He wouldn't have acknowledged his mistakes had he not bumped into me. And there's a high chance he would allow his son to grow up to become an overbearing bully." Lucian did not bother to pay attention to him and wasn't intending to show any mercy even if the man were to kneel before him. Instead, he squatted down, carried Archie and Benny in his arms, and nodded at Roxanne. Roxanne then carried Estella before the family of 5 walked toward the school gate together. Behind them, Dave continued imploring loudly, "Mr. Farwell, please have mercy on me. Mr. Farwell." Drastic changes by the time Lucian and his family returned to the manor, Caden called and said, "Mr. Farwell, I've gathered evidence of Dave Render's corrupt practices and handed it over to the authorities. He'll probably be dismissed soon." Lucian felt there was no point in showing Dave mercy since he had no desire to see the latter's disgusting face again. After stopping the car, Lucian got down and carried the two boys into the house. Roxanne, too, carried Estella like how Lucian did. Upon seeing that, Sonia could not help but mutter, "You kids are old enough to walk on your own. Why do you still need your daddy and mommy to carry you?" Elias immediately noticed the injuries on Archie and Benny's knees. He walked up and checked on them. "What happened? Did they fall?" "Dad, they're fine. I've treated their wounds. They should recover in 2 days," Roxanne responded while putting Estella down. The little girl ran over to check on the boys and was surprised. "Mommy, the medicine is really effective. Their wounds are already healing." Sonia hurried over and checked on Archie and Benny when she learned that Lucian was only carrying them because they were injured. She and Elias were relieved after confirming that their grandchildren's injuries were not serious. "Archie, Benny, injuries on knees might take time to heal, so make sure you walk less and avoid getting the wounds wet," Roxanne reminded. The boys bobbed their heads in response. Not long after dinner, Jonathan arrived at the manor with Madeline in his car. Their unexpected visit took Lucian and Roxanne by surprise. "Why you two?" Roxanne glanced at Jonathan before turning her attention to Madeline. "They're well dressed today." Clad in a pair of casual clothes and abandoning his usual stiff demeanor, Jonathan looked more mature and dignified. Not long after, they heard Dave venting his frustration by beating Zarin, causing the latter to scream in pain. Madeline, on the other hand, wore a dress that accentuated her curves and enhanced her charm. Even Lucian could not help praising Jonathan. "Jonathan, the way you dress today reminds me of my charming young self." The other 3 people exchanged glances. "How old is he? Why is he talking like an old man?" However, the question Roxanne asked next instantly made them feel awkward. "Are you two on a date today?" Hearing that, Jonathan appeared flustered. He bounced up from his seat as soon as he sat down before stealing a glance at Madeline. Madeline behaved just as nervous as if someone had exposed their secret. Her face turned crimson red almost instantly, and she glared at Roxanne. And no, 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 both Jonathan and Madeline denied it simultaneously. Lucian sighed inwardly. "It's so obvious they are hiding something from us." Amused, Roxanne smirked as she watched them blush and panic, finding their reaction quite amusing. "I just bought him dinner to thank him for his help at the hospital. That's all." Madeline was still busy explaining while Jonathan had quietened down. "Lucian, Roxanne, we made a trip over here because my family found some exquisite herbs when they went to Zandania to procure medicinal herbs. Since Roxanne is pregnant, I'm sure these exquisite herbs can supplement her nutrition." Jonathan explained the reason for their visit while Madeline inclined her head in agreement. "That's very thoughtful of you, Jonathan. You seem to have changed a lot lately. Did something happen?" Roxanne asked out of curiosity. Ever since Jonathan returned to work, his demeanor did a 180 for mysterious reasons. He was like a completely different person, and even his mannerisms had changed drastically. Lucian remained composed but perked up his ears, eager to hear what Jonathan had to say. I had a part in its creation. Even after pondering for some time, Jonathan did not know how to answer that question. He shook his head, then looked at Lucian and Roxanne in confusion. Have I changed? Why don't I feel any different? All I know is that I feel like changing my clothes now. Such a response made the couple change their minds. Jonathan had not changed much after all and was still as blunt as ever. Needless to say, Roxanne also noticed that Madeline kept sneaking glances at Jonathan. Can practically see the stars shining in her eyes. Meanwhile, Jonathan immediately returned to his car and brought out the medicinal herbs. Lucian nodded and thanked him with a smile. That's so thoughtful of you. Roxanne knew the medicinal herbs were valuable at first glance. They were the kind that not even money could buy. These are all safe to be consumed during pregnancy. These must have been your recommendations, am I right? Roxanne asked while looking at Madeline. Jonathan may be familiar with the places of origin and prices of many medicinal herbs and can identify them, but he doesn't necessarily know much about their specific effects. This time, Madeline admitted to it openly. You're right. Although Jonathan knows their supplements, he isn't aware of their contraindications. He previously sent my mom a ton of herbs suitable for consumption during pregnancy. Because of that, she kept urging me to get pregnant, saying they would come in handy if I do. Jonathan scratched his head and smiled sheepishly at the mention of that embarrassing incident. It also quickly dawned on Madeline that she should not have brought it up because right after that, Roxanne began teasing her relentlessly. Well, she's not wrong. You can take them if you're pregnant. If you get pregnant in the future, I bet Jonathan will obtain all sorts of supplements for you. I haven't even expressed my feelings to him, but here she is, trying to let the cat out of the bag. Madeline panicked instantly and shot Roxanne a pleading look, begging the latter not to say too much. That won't be a problem, Jonathan piped up. Roxana burst into laughter, and even Lucian smiled. Suddenly, they heard Estella's voice come from upstairs. Aunt Madeline! Aunt Madeline, you're here! What were you talking about just now? Is Mommy pregnant? Archie and Benny also stuck their heads over the spiral staircase. Both of them looked at Roxanne at the same time. Mommy, you're pregnant? Why didn't you tell us? All three children looked excited and were about to go downstairs when Elias reminded the two boys about the injuries on their knees. Then, Elias carried the boys downstairs while Estella skipped over to Roxanne. Roxanne had planned to keep it a secret for a little longer and wait until her pregnancy had progressed to a stable stage before telling the children the good news. However, she now had no choice but to admit it. That's right. You'll have a younger brother or sister very soon. Wow! Really? You're awesome, Mommy! Estella exclaimed, jumping for joy. She leaned forward and kissed Roxanne on the cheek several times, seemingly giving her encouragement for the pregnancy. Archie and Benny were also all smiles. They walked over and held Roxanne's hands lovingly, one on each side. Mommy, you're so amazing, Archie said, his tone sincere. As for Benny, he was already thinking far ahead. Mommy, how many babies are you going to have? Can you give birth to 2 more? Can we have another brother or sister? Roxanne was at a loss for how to answer his question. How many more babies am I going to have? I mean, just giving birth to one more is good enough. As Lucian watched the children shower Roxanne with love and affection, a sense of jealousy suddenly crept over him. I'm the father of this baby. It doesn't matter whether it's a younger brother or sister. Either way, I had a part in the baby's creation, so why isn't anyone giving me credit for my contribution? Did someone switch out his brain? Madeline proceeded to update Roxanne on the subsequent developments related to the bacteria outbreak at the hospital. I've gone to the psychiatric hospital to check on Christina. She has really gone mad. She's semi-conscious, unresponsive, and keeps talking gibberish. The doctors there also mentioned she once sneaked into the medication room in the middle of the night, grabbed a lot of medicine, and swallowed them all. In the end, they had to send her to the hospital where they managed to save her after much effort. The incident's instigator, Christina, was now of unsound mind. As for the hospital's doctors and nurses, they received much acknowledgement after surviving the ordeal. The health department's senior officials even came down to present awards to them in person. The hospital also received praise and official recognition with a chance of being included on the list of designated hospitals cooperating with medical insurance providers in the future. Jonathan added, the criminal proceedings against Christina have entered the prosecution stage. Regardless of whether the suspect is mentally unstable, such a crime carries a mandatory prison sentence of at least 15 years. And because of Christina's case, Electra's sentence has been commuted. Lucian and Roxanne exchanged glances while quietly breathing sighs of relief. Whether she goes by Christina or Aubrey, she'll have nothing to do with us from now on. Oh, one more thing. Lucian, after you purchased the patent licensing for Maranta, Mr. Goldstein suddenly cancelled his itinerary in Chania. Perhaps it was because he had planned to monopolize the market for that medicine, but that didn't work out. Or it could be because of Christina's mental state, Jonathan continued. However, Lucian knitted his brows and shook his head. No. Someone like him wouldn't let Christina influence his actions. There's only one possibility: his plans in Chania fell through. Think about it. What would you do if you wanted everyone to depend on your medicine? Roxanne and Madeline were shocked to hear that. Meanwhile, Jonathan's gaze turned cold and piercing. I see. So, what happened at the hospital this time was merely a test. Not only did Mr. Goldstein know all about Christina's plot, but he even deliberately allowed her to carry it out. Lucian nodded in response. Jonathan's admiration for Lucian instantly grew stronger. I didn't even consider things from that angle. I'm still too naive. The four of them continued chatting for a little longer, and it was past 8 o'clock in the evening when Jonathan left with Madeline. Roxanne wondered out loud how long it would take for the pair to finally confirm their relationship. I'm guessing things will move along very swiftly from here on in. Jonathan has finally seen the light, Lucian said with a faint smile. However, she shook her head. She still did not believe that would happen. Hence, the couple made a bet on whether Jonathan and Madeline would confirm their relationship within the next week. If they did, Lucian would win the bet and have the chance to make Roxanne do whatever he wished. This bet sounds pretty good. As for what to make you do, I'll have to give it some thought. Should it be something you hate to do the most, or should it be something that you're the most afraid of? Lucian grinned impishly, seemingly confident of winning. Naturally, if Roxanne's guess proved accurate, she would also get to make Lucian do whatever she wanted. However, she was quite troubled about that, as Lucian seemed down to do anything she asked of him even without the bet. If that's the case, it'd be meaningless even if I won. Since the temperature at night was starting to get colder, Jonathan closed the car window and turned on the heat a little. Madeline thought he would send her straight home after leaving the Farwell residence. To her surprise, he remarked on how beautiful the moon looked that night and said there was a spot he wanted to take her to that was perfect for admiring the night sky. Find the wish bottle. One would see a spacious square after driving up the road near Elmling Park. At that time, the moon was shining brightly, and the stars were sparse in the night sky. Groups of 2s and 3s hung out around the square. They were either couples in their honeymoon phase or small families with children. The place was basically an ideal hotspot for couples to go on dates. It seemed as if Jonathan had already prepared everything beforehand, for he took out a waterproof mat and some snacks from the car before finding an open space with fewer people around. He then began setting everything up. All of a sudden, a sweet and romantic sensation filled Madeline's heart. It'd be lovely if we could set up a tent here and watch the moon and stars before we fall asleep. To her surprise, Jonathan answered, "I've got a tent," but, hearing that, Madeline became flustered, and her cheeks flushed red. If it weren't for the darkness, Jonathan would have noticed her cheeks were as red as a tomato. She was not prepared to spend the night alone with him in a tent. While her thoughts ran wild, Jonathan continued spreading out the mat and arranging the food on it. After that, he took out the equipment for boiling water from the car and got to work. "I noticed something. Your current preferences have begun to resemble Mr. Farwell's," said Madeline in an attempt to change the topic. "I suppose so. I used to drink coffee just for the taste, but now, I drink it to improve my mood. Of course, I'm not like Lucian." Upon hearing that, she could not help thinking how strange it was. Jonathan would never have said anything like that in the past. What has changed in him? Did someone switch out his brain? Or did someone else reincarnate in his body like what happens in novels and movies? However, although she felt doubtful, she was also overjoyed. "I don't try out every kind of good quality coffee. I've always stuck to plain coffee." Jonathan's tone sounded nonchalant, yet his words carried a certain philosophical sense that concerned the profound principles of life. His demeanor dazed Madeline. As she gazed at his chiseled side profile, which could be seen faintly under the moonlight, she felt her heat race. "He's so freaking handsome." Finally, Jonathan finished setting the place up. "Have a seat. The sky tonight is gorgeous, isn't it?" "Yep, it is." As soon as Madeline sat down, she felt as if she had returned to her youthful school days. She could not remember the last time she admired the beautiful moon and lush field with such peace and tranquility. Gradually, she calmed down and began to enjoy the rare, relaxing moment. The duo chatted about some interesting stories from their past over coffee and snacks, sharing their memories with each other. Although Madeline could not see Jonathan's expression clearly in the darkness, she could tell that he was no longer as aloof and distant as he was before. She was filled with joy, for the change in his demeanor proved that he had finally gotten over the dark moments of his past. Their fingers touched when Jonathan was carefully handing her a cup of coffee, and that made her heart flutter. By the way, I remember something interesting. Back when I was in high school, I once came here with my friends. This huge square didn't exist back then. We buried wish bottles on a slope somewhere nearby. I wonder if it's still there, said Jonathan suddenly. Really? I'm quite curious about what kind of wishes you made back then. Where is it? Can we still find it? Madeline was eager to find out. Come on. Let's go and dig it out. Perhaps it's still there. Smiling, Jonathan got to his feet and extended his hand to her. In the next second, he realized his gesture might be inappropriate and wanted to retract his hand, but before he could do so, Madeline swiftly placed her right hand in his palm. Jonathan was slightly startled, but he quickly flashed a smile and helped her up. With that, they headed toward the location where the wish bottles were buried. Is that a yes? The two spent 15 minutes and much effort trying to locate all 4 bottles. The bottlenecks were all stuffed with corks that blocked the rain and moisture from damaging the contents within. Someone even suggested the idea of placing desiccants in the bottles, so ultimately, all the papers were preserved perfectly without even a single sign of melt. Holding the 4 bottles in his hands, Jonathan smiled. Let's go and clean them up nicely before opening them. I can't believe it's been almost 13 years. Madeline nodded with a faint smile on her face as an unusual emotion consumed her. It felt as if she were brought back to her youthful days many years ago. They found a water tap near the field and used it to wash away the excess mud on the bottles before wiping them dry. Then, they returned to their camping site. Which one is yours? Madeline peered at the transparent bottles. The colored papers each of them used were vastly different. There were purple, blue, pink, and white ones. She guessed that the white paper belonged to him because, judging from his past character, he probably wouldn't like anything fancy. Gauging the distance with his steps, Jonathan stopped at an inconspicuous spot on the slope. He soon began clearing the weeds and digging through the soil. Surprisingly, the bottles were hidden quite deep beneath the ground. He continued digging about 30 centimeters down before finally touching something that produced a crisp sound. I found it. It's still here. Let's look around the area. There were 4 of us back then, so we buried quite a few, Jonathan said excitedly. It was like a treasure hunt. Feeling equally excited, Madeline began clearing off the surrounding weeds and soil with her bare hands. Then, does the pink one belongs to Electra? A thought struck Madeline. Jonathan smiled as he nodded. Yes. That belongs to Electra, indeed. But then, I don't think it's appropriate for us to pry into their secrets. So, I think we should keep it for them and pass it to them when we see them. Madeline gave it some thought and eventually agreed to it. Prying into others' privacy without their permission wasn't ethical at all. Jonathan placed the other bottles onto the ground except for the one with the blue paper. We can open mine. This blue one belongs to me. He recalled past memories and began mumbling. Lucian and James joined us too, but they refused to write their wishes. The white one belongs to James, but I'm not sure if he had written anything. We'll open it with him some other day. Blue? It represents depression, rationality, and hope. I think these characteristics match well with the emotions Jonathan felt back then. Seeing how excited Madeline was, Jonathan removed the cork and smiled shyly. To be honest, I've forgotten what my wish was. I can't remember much because it's been so long. I know, right? That's why I can't wait to see what's in there. I'm so curious. Madeline didn't bother to keep her eagerness in check and immediately reached out to take the paper as soon as Jonathan removed it from the bottle. Here. You can have a look first. Jonathan handed her the blue paper. She carefully opened the paper, which was folded neatly into a simple square, before using her phone's torchlight to make out the words on it. The words read, "Madeline, will you be my girlfriend?" She was promptly dumbstruck. Upon scanning the words on the paper, she stood frozen in place and was at a complete loss for words. Thinking her eyes had deceived her, she read the sentence again to make sure she wasn't dreaming. I'm pretty sure I didn't read it wrong. That's exactly what's written on it. But why? In shock and disbelief, Madeline lifted her head to look at Jonathan, using the torchlight to shine on his face. This can't be real. Jonathan, this is, she stuttered, wondering whether she was imagining things, and that was when she saw the mischievous smile on Jonathan's face. Did he plan this since the start? Was he acting all along? This is all just a lie, right? He even said the bottles were buried years ago. I bet he buried them only hours ago. Madeline took a long time to recover from the shock as a look of joy slowly replaced her surprised expression. I can't believe he confessed his love to me in such a romantic way. Elation filled her to the brim, and tears began welling in her eyes as she was so ecstatic she almost couldn't contain herself. Madeline, is that a yes? Jonathan's gaze was as tender as the moonlight that showered down on earth that night. Madeline nodded fervently. She replied, yes. Yes. The purple wish bottle the moon was exceptionally stunning on that very night. Jonathan, tell me the truth. Did you swap your soul with someone else or what? With her hand in his, Madeline could almost feel the warmth from his palm along with an electric current that seeped all the way to her heart, creating ripples within. I can't believe he used such an extraordinary way to confess his love. But on second thought, I was the one who trusted him too much. I should have realized something was amiss when I noticed that the soil at the slope was recently loosened. Or else, he wouldn't have been able to dig through it so effortlessly. Nope. I'm still me. It's just that the way I'm expressing myself is different now. Plus, I wasn't lying to you about the bottles. I didn't bury them hours ago. I dug them up a few days ago before I returned to work. He recalled how everything played out. One day, he suddenly thought of the wish bottles they buried years ago, so he went to Elmling Park alone to dig them up. He had forgotten all about his past self's expectations of the future. After a long break, Jonathan realized he didn't like how empty and pointless his life was, so in order to find out what he truly wanted, he opened his wish bottle. He unfolded the paper to reveal the wishes he wrote in the past. I hope to achieve a successful career with Lucian in the future and marry the woman I love. Jonathan was in a daze after reading his past wishes. Simple. Turns out I've lost my way after all these years of enduring the stress from my family and career. Slowly, I've gotten tired of everything, which ultimately leads to depression. Now, after coming face to face with my past self, I finally see the light. Upon having an epiphany, he vowed to himself that he would acknowledge his feelings and no longer be afraid. As such, he came up with the idea to confess his love in such a manner. "Jonathan, I'm so glad to see how much you've changed." Madeline leaned over to nestle her head on his shoulder. There they sat, chatting casually while enjoying the night breeze. "Electra is getting out of jail soon. Maybe her wish bottle would give her some inspiration on how to lead her life in the future," Jonathan mumbled. "How many of us could still stay true to ourselves? I hope so. But who does the purple one belongs to?" Madeline asked curiously. "You are not going to believe this. I have no idea who it belongs to, either. I only remember that Lucian was the one who brought it over and that the bottle belonged to a woman." Jonathan would never have told Madeline the truth in the past, but it didn't really matter anymore. After all, Roxanne and Lucian were already having their fourth child. However, Madeline's reaction was stronger than expected. She snapped, "So this bottle might have belonged to another woman whom Lucian was dating in the past? I must tell Roxanne about this." Deep down, she was afraid that Electra's incident would happen all over again. Feeling troubled, Jonathan frowned. "Does that make me a leaker? Keep your wits about you." It was getting late, and regardless of how impatient Madeline was, she couldn't disturb a pregnant woman's rest at that hour, so she decided to wait until tomorrow. As the night grew darker and the coldness began to set in, Jonathan quickly took off his coat and draped it over Madeline. "Do you feel cold? Should I take you home now?" Jonathan uttered in an undertone. Only then did he realize that Madeline was already dozing off. He flashed a faint smile and changed his posture. "Let me carry you," Jonathan said. Without waiting for her to agree, he immediately scooped up her petite body and headed toward the car. Madeline was indeed tuckered out. After being carried into the car amidst her drowsiness, she felt warmth enveloping her, brought about by a blanket that appeared out of nowhere. She could sense Jonathan tidying things up around her in her groggy state, and a sense of security washed over her, allowing her to drift off to sleep. After an uncertain amount of time, Jonathan softly called out, "Maddie, Maddie! We're home!" Madeline gradually woke up, feeling a little lightheaded. However, the moment she heard that affectionate term of endearment, she sobered up in a flash and grinned at him. "I'm officially Jonathan's girlfriend now. Why did you bring me home?" All of a sudden, she felt reluctant to part with the man, wanting to spend more time with him. "But Madeline is my girlfriend. I'll have to listen to her. Come to think of it, I'm also curious about who the purple bottle belonged to. Why did that person ask Lucian to deliver the bottle instead of showing up themselves?" "Okay. You can tell her. I would like to know who it belonged to, too." Jonathan decided to betray Lucian there and then. "Well, it wouldn't be appropriate for us to go directly to a hotel, right?" A hint of passion gleamed in Jonathan's eyes, prompting Madeline to feel flustered. "No way! That would indeed be inappropriate." Still, she managed to think of a way to phrase her thoughts. She pouted and said, "I meant I'm hungry." "All right. Let's go have some supper, then," Jonathan responded decisively, restarting the car and turning the vehicle around. Madeline got up from the back seat and climbed into the front passenger seat, giggling. From today onward, this car's passenger seat is exclusively reserved for me. No problem. From now on, this car will only pick you up. Oh, an MDM. Xander as well. Jonathan's voice was deep and magnetic, sounding particularly pleasant. The joy that had settled in Madeline's heart once again surged. Early the next day, Roxanne was woken up by a phone call from her best friend. Listening to her best friend recounting Jonathan's confession last night, Roxanne also found it incredible. However, at the same time, she felt genuinely happy for them upon finding out they had finally confirmed their relationship. In the end, Madeline hesitated for a while before mentioning the purple wishing bottle. Jonathan and I are just curious. You can just ask him about this matter casually. It's been more than a decade, and with how outstanding Lucian was, he must have charmed a lot of girls during that time, so this isn't at all surprising. Anyway, I hope I won't cause any conflicts between you two by telling you this. Ah! I shouldn't have mentioned anything. Look at me, always poking my nose into others' business. Don't let this sow any discord between you and Lucian after all you've been through to be together. Regret churned within Madeline's chest after she finished telling Roxanne about everything. Some things should be kept a secret forever. So many years have passed. Perhaps Lucian has already forgotten about it. Unexpectedly, Roxanne burst into laughter. Roxanne, why are you laughing? Be serious. I really don't want to see Electra's incident repeat itself. Lucian is too outstanding, so you must always keep your wits about you, Madeline reminded sternly. Lifelong imprint, how is that possible? Madeline exclaimed in surprise. She searched her memory of the many years she had known Roxanne, but there was no evidence that Roxanne and Lucian had met during their teenage years. During their first 3 years of marriage, Roxanne was nothing more than a nominal wife, and ultimately, Lucian heartlessly divorced her. Then came 6 years of separation. Roxanne gave birth to 3 children. Estella was on the verge of death and was diagnosed by the hospital as unlikely to survive. Unexpectedly, after several twists and turns, Ethan went to Epi and tracked down the hospital Roxanne had delivered the triplets. In the end, Estella was rescued and brought back to Horrington. From then on, Roxanne lived with her children, Archie and Benny, while Lucian took care of Estella. The family proceeded to lead separate lives for 6 years. At present, Roxanne had returned to Horrington for almost a year. Aside from the past 10 years, Roxanne had never mentioned to Madeline about knowing Lucian earlier. Well, it's a long story. Maybe I shouldn't say anything. Roxanne's teasing tone sounded casual. She seemed totally unfazed by the purple wish bottle. Hearing her friend's impish voice, Madeline protested loudly, "No. You must tell us. I'll go get Jonathan, and we'll come over to listen to your story." Meanwhile, at the manor, Roxanne smiled. "Fine. You 2 lovebirds can come over. I'll tell you everything." When Roxanne returned home after sending the 3 kids to school, Madeline and Jonathan had already arrived. Jonathan was holding the purple wish bottle, which was still sealed. The 2 looked at Roxanne suspiciously, unconvinced she had written the letter. However, Roxanne continued giggling and finally stopped after being yelled at by Madeline. Subsequently, Roxanne replied nonchalantly, "About that. Will you believe me if I tell you that purple wishing bottle belonged to me? Roxanne, no matter how you put it, this wish bottle was buried by Lucian and me the year before we went to university. I don't remember having known you back then. Jonathan had repeatedly explained that to Madeline in the car. Back then, Jonathan, Lucian, James, and Electra would often hang out together on weekends, even though they attended different schools. Jonathan remembered that although they hung out together, everyone was engaged in different activities. Lucian spent his time studying various business cases and acquiring business knowledge whenever he had the chance, while James had already developed a strong interest in psychology. Now, it seemed to Jonathan that James' mother, Yennefer, had already fallen ill at that time. Electra, on the other hand, paid attention to various fashion trends and celebrity clothing every day. Jonathan was the only one who truly focused on his studies. He had no choice but to rely on rote memorization, as he wasn't a natural talent. Roxanne nodded, the expression in her eyes becoming somewhat distant as she reminisced about the past. Indeed, under normal circumstances, I would have never met Lucian. The high school he attended, being a renowned art academy in the country, was not only an excellent private school but also a place teeming with children of the social elites. Jonathan, like you, I only attended an ordinary high school. Jonathan nodded in agreement. She elaborated, however, you were just being stubborn too. Your family had the means to send you to the same school as Lucian. He told me this himself back then. Yes, that's true. Lucian even told you that? In that case, you two must have been very close at that time, right? Asked Jonathan. Unexpectedly, Roxanne shook her head. Nonetheless, a faint, contented smile appeared on her face. Actually, we weren't close. Fate is really quite fascinating. Do you remember the custom of student exchanges between many schools in the past? What is your name? As Roxanne relayed the story from her memories, the scene from decades ago played out in their minds. Lucian was unqualified as an exchange student because the objective of the exchange program was for the student to experience the school life of a normal high school and compare it to that of an art academy, including the common practices and order. However, he was merely 16 years old back then, so he couldn't care less about those. He would occasionally skip classes because the curriculum for regular high schools was probably too boring for him. One typical day, Lucian, James, and Jonathan planned to sneak into a trade show, so Lucian only stayed for the first class after lunch break before skipping the rest. Back then, the school's security was tight with guards stationed at all the gates, so he had no choice but to scale the wall near the library. Unexpectedly, nails were scattered atop the walls that day. His hands were pierced and he fell to the ground, spraining his ankle in the process. Roxanne, being a top student, usually spent all her free time at the library. She was rushing to her classroom that day after missing more than an hour of class due to being too engrossed in her reading. That was how they met. Roxanne had never seen a more handsome young man than Lucian in her life, much less one in such a sorry state. Lucian was in so much pain as he examined his ankle and his palms. Hey, are you okay? Do you need help? What hurt your hand? We need to stop the bleeding immediately and ensure you don't contract a tetanus infection. Roxanne remembered those words vividly because those were the first words she said to Lucian. Lucian nodded before glancing at Roxanne. His gaze didn't linger on her for long. Roxanne told Lucian not to move before running back to the library and getting a small medical kit containing all kinds of first aid supplies. That's right. Lucian was an exchange student who came to my school. He was only there for a short month, but he left a lifelong imprint in my heart. She then helped Lucian disinfect his wound and stop the bleeding. However, his ankle was badly sprained. Never in his wildest dreams would he expect a high school girl to be familiar enough with the massage technique in traditional medicine to push the tendon in his calf back to its original place. At that moment, he vividly remembered how her side profile looked and how a tendril of her hair swayed in the light breeze. All right, done. You need to get a tetanus shot next. It's best if you don't move your leg for the next 24 hours. She flashed him a faint smile before picking up the medical kit and heading back to the library. Lucian thought she would be back. Instead, she hurriedly rushed back to class. However, Lucian's features were deeply ingrained in her memory after that encounter. After all, he was too good-looking. It would be hard to forget a face like that. Following the incident, Lucian waited for her at the library several times, but she didn't show up. It wasn't until the day Lucian planned to skip class with Jonathan and James to bury his wish bottle that they finally met again. When he passed by the library, he ran into Roxanne again. "Hey, what's your name?" Lucian asked casually. Roxanne's gaze, however, was focused on the empty wish bottle in his hand. "I know who you are, Mr. Farwell. May I ask what is that?" she asked, pointing at the wish bottle. "You know me." A faint smile curved Lucian's lips at that knowledge. His smile accentuated his charm, causing Roxanne to avert her gaze in bashfulness. Roxanne nodded with certainty at his question. "Heaven knows how many times I wrote his name on my notebook." After finding out he was an exchange student from the art academy, she knew she would never get to become friends with him. "This is a wish bottle. After writing down your wish, you put it in the bottle and bury it deep in the ground." Fall head over heels for him. Lucian appeared serious as he suggested that. Roxanne was stunned by his offer. However, she was naive back then, so she didn't consider the possibility that someone might sneak a peek at what she wrote. Hence, she nodded in agreement before rummaging around her bag for her diary. She then tore a page from it and swiftly folded it. The pages of her diary were purple in color. "Is that it? Aren't you going to write anything else?" Lucian asked curiously. Roxanne shook her head. "Yes, that's all. All my wishes are written on that page. I have a lot of wishes, so I wonder if they will ever come true." "Okay. Put it in then." When Lucian inched closer, a breeze blew past them, carrying the pleasant scent from his body. As the scent enveloped her, the intimacy between them colored her cheeks red. She carefully slid the paper into the wish bottle. Lucian instantly plugged the bottle's opening with a cork. "I'll go and bury your wishes now. The earth represents never-ending hope, so I believe that by burying it beneath the earth, your wishes will definitely come true." In a split second, the expression on Roxanne's face froze. She would forever remember that scene. Several years later, "You dig it up and see if your wish came true." "But I don't know what I should write," he said with a look of boredom. I see. That's too bad. Roxanne did her best to remain calm, but just the sight of him standing right in front of her made butterflies flutter furiously in her belly. Yet. How about this, then? Do you have a wish? Why don't you write yours and put it in this bottle? I'll help you bury it. I'll tell you where it is in the future, and you can dig it up. What do you think? Lucian tilted his head slightly askew, and the smile on his face was both dashing and charming at the same time. The sight of his smile under the sun took her breath away. Lucian's period as an exchange student ended after that. He left and never showed up at Roxanne's high school again. The two of them only met twice when Roxanne was 15. Yet, those two encounters were deeply engraved in her memory and frequented her dreams. She didn't even get to ask him whether he really did bury that wish bottle for her. In fact, he didn't even know her name. The next time they met was when she almost graduated from university. That year, her father married her off to Lucian with a price. She was confident that he would recognize her, but alas, he treated her coldly throughout those 3 years of marriage and never regarded her as his wife. In the end, she threw herself at him like a moth to a flame, acting on her immature yet fervent feelings. Getting pregnant with his children, however, was totally unexpected. Jonathan and Madeline found it hard to recover from the shock after Roxanne finished her story. So, you fell head over heels for Lucian when you were 15. Madeline felt inexplicably moved. No wonder she still loves Lucian despite being hurt so badly. The corners of Roxanne's lips curled into a nonchalant smile as she acknowledged her feelings. Those details match my memory. Lucian did sprain his ankle that year and took a few days off from school. After that incident, he appeared to have something on his mind and kept returning to that high school. Referring to his memory, Jonathan confirmed that Roxanne did, in fact, appear in Lucian's life at that specific timeline. Looks like this bottle with the purple paper is indeed yours. He passed the wish bottle to her. The wooden cork was loose, so Roxanne removed it easily. She took out the folded piece of purple paper and slowly unfolded it. Not what he expected after attending a short meeting at the office, Lucian rushed home immediately. He had undergone formal antenatal training and knew all the procedures of taking care of a pregnant woman like the back of his hand. As such, he was determined to do everything himself. Upon his arrival at the manor, he was surprised to see Jonathan and Madeline there. You just brought health supplements yesterday, so what do you plan on giving today? Lucian teased. Yet he could sense Madeline glaring at him, while Jonathan was also wearing a gloomy expression. Only Roxanne was full of smiles. She was well aware that the two of them, upon listening to her story, resented Lucian for how he treated her during those 3 years of marriage back then. What's wrong, Jonathan? Say something. Madeline's frosty gaze caused Lucian's hair to stand on end. Without hesitation, he tried to recall if he had gotten on Roxanne's nerves, as that was the likely reason for Madeline's hostility. Madeline leaned closer to Roxanne, curious about her best friend's wishes in the past. The purple paper was filled with words, but the writing was neat. She had written down a lot of wishes. Her greatest wish read, "I hope to get into the same university as Lucian." Other than that, she also wished to study medicine, make lots of money, and have a promising career. The wishes of a 15-year-old girl were simple and straightforward, but the usage of adjectives was verbose and convoluted. Madeline couldn't help but laugh. I never knew you were so poetic. Roxanne wasn't embarrassed in the slightest and even boldly admitted, many girls in my class asked me to help them with their love letters back then. Lucian, do you still remember this wish bottle? Roxanne showed him the wish bottle in her hand. As if remembering something, she refolded the piece of purple paper and stuffed it back into the bottle. A single glance was all it took for Lucian to remember what it was. Isn't this the wish bottle I gave you back then? Looks like Jonathan has dug it out. What about it? Are you guys talking about the past? Jonathan asked, shooting a careful glance at Madeline. However, his nonchalance intensified Madeline's anger, and she snapped, Mr. Farwell, since you've known Roxanne a long time ago, why did you treat her that way after getting married to her back then? Lucian, you should have been able to recognize Roxanne. She's the high school girl that you mentioned before. Jonathan remembered Lucian telling him about his encounter with a mysterious girl. At that moment, it dawned upon Lucian what was going on. When he shifted his gaze to Roxanne, the latter grinned back at him. I haven't had the opportunity to explain, so why don't you do the honors yourself, Mr. Farwell? Lucian didn't know how to react. He had long expressed his remorse to Roxanne over what happened. Actually, the reason was simple. I couldn't accept the fact that the girl I was once in love with married me because of money. You can blame me for what happened, but that was how I saw it back then. This was all my parents' fault, or you can say that fate had brought us together. If I could go back in time, I wouldn't have wanted it to happen that way. That year, Lucian had just taken charge of Farwell Group. He was weathering all sorts of difficulties in the business world and suffered all kinds of plots to undermine him. His experience made him realize that all the theoretical business knowledge he had was irrelevant. Fortunately, he didn't panic in the face of adversity. Steeling himself, he struck back at his enemies with a vengeance as he swiftly made investments in many industries he saw potential in. His exposure to the business world consequently made it difficult for him to trust anyone. It was under such circumstances that Roxanne became his wife. In order to bring good luck to his grandfather, his parents found him a bride and paid a pretty sum for it. Little did he expect his bride to be the girl whom he had a good impression of in school. The change in Roxanne wasn't something that he welcomed. A studious girl who spent all her time reading in the library wasn't supposed to walk down such a path, marrying indiscriminately for money. It made him wonder if she was also willing to marry another random rich heir for the same reason. Therefore, there was no way he would develop feelings for Roxanne, whom he perceived as materialistic in the past. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates. Link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.